Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller here with your Sana Q&A Mondays, answering some more questions. This question comes from a parent. She says, I am being required to attend co-parenting counseling sessions with my ex-covert narc by the family courts in California, and I'm having lots and lots of anxiety about it. Our first session is in November. I left him almost 2 years ago. Every single custody mediation, family counseling session, or attorney email communication with him turned into my ex accusing me of things I didn't do, twisting things to make me sound like a monster and projection. For example, he says I'm a horrible mother and I'm not involved with them. I do everything for our children, school projects, Santa, tooth fairy, birthday parties, etc., while he literally laid in bed or drank beer in the backyard. He says I'm violent and angry. Projection. He was always yelling at me, calling me names, and too rough with our kids. All I can do is say that's not true, and it's just a he said, she said with no validation. What is the best way to handle these sessions with him? How can I curb the anxiety and be able to shut him down in a session? I'm worried the therapist may be duped like some of the other mediators and therapists we've seen. It's a toss-up. Some see through his bullshit and some get sucked into it. Okay, so I've never heard about this, the required co-parent counseling sessions by the family courts. The first thing I would recommend is for you to get some kind of legal representative. I don't know if you already have an attorney for this case, or a paralegal, or how that works. I would ask them for the advice. Are you even able to have someone present with you, or is this just you and your ex? If it's just you and your ex, then I would get some advice from your attorney before you walk in there, just to know what your legal rights are, and if there's anything that your attorney can help you with in terms of legal advice. In terms, I don't have any experience in that. I don't give legal advice, and I'm not a parent. So I've never been in your situation having to co-parent with a narcissist. I would recommend looking at Kim Saeed from letmereach.com. She's the author of No Contact Like a Boss, or How to Do No Contact Like a Boss. She's also a mama like you. She also shared custody with narcissists. So she's been there, done that. I would get her advice. She wrote lots of articles. I think she might offer some professional services. She also has lots of articles. She has the book. She has some other courses. I would check with her because she has experience on that. The advice that I could give you is how can you show up in this situation? So if that were me, I would be very cautious not to get caught in the self-defense. You know how that's what they do, right? Anything that you say, they turn it against you. They do that projection thing that you talked about where they accuse you of doing the exact things that they do. I would read Dr. George Simon's book, In Sheep's Clothing. If you haven't read that yet, towards the end of the book, he goes into every one of the covert manipulation tactics that these types of people use. That way you understand exactly what he's doing. I would read that, I would memorize those. I would bring the book with you, and I would even bring that up to your therapist. Now, the thing is, we don't know who your therapist is. We don't know if your therapist is a narcissist or sociopath, because that could be very possible. We don't know if your therapist is a clueless codependent stuck in those same patterns, can't recognize it in his or her own life, and certainly can't see it in yours. Or if that therapist has no experience with psychological abuse and narcissists and sociopaths and have any real clue what's going on. We don't know. Maybe, just maybe, your therapist sees it. But if you walk in there with this book, and I wouldn't tell your ex anything about it, I would just keep that tucked away as a card that you can play when the time comes. I would also memorize all of those things. That way you can see it really clearly what he's doing. And during your session, as he's doing what he's doing, I would say something like, that's interesting. That's one of those, I would name it, rationalization, projection, blame shifting, redirection, whatever behavior that was that you've seen in Dr. George Simon's book, those covert aggressive manipulation tactics. I would say, that's interesting. That sounds just like whatever tactic from Dr. George Simon's book, In Sheep's Clothing. Now, let's read what that means. And I would introduce this to the therapist, and I would read it from this book. You know, Dr. George Simon, as a psychologist, has over 30 years of experience doing this. He knows his stuff. He's licensed, accredited in the psychology field. Your therapist is in the psychology field. So hopefully he or she recognizes the validity of the information that you're bringing up, and maybe it opens their eyes. I would be very cautious that you don't get caught into the emotional triggering. Keep yourself going back to an emotional neutral point. You're going to need to practice this a lot before you go in there, because you're going to be so emotional that you might, and he knows exactly the ways to provoke your anger. And if he triggers you to be angry like that, what could happen is you could look like the bad guy. Because you know how like they can be so calm, so collected and put together, and it could really make you seem like you're the crazy one, you're the one off the rocker, you're the one unhinged based on your reaction. Because like when someone is accusing you of false things, it's like exasperating. You just want to vindicate yourself. You want to like scream the truth, and no one's listening to you, and it makes you so angry, right? It's normal to feel angry when someone is abusing and using you. However, that's going to work to your detriment in this kind of situation. You need to be as calm and cool and neutral as possible. So I would rehearse all of this in the mirror at home for hours before you go to this session. And like, how like before you go to see the narcissist, or before you go have a conversation with the narcissist, you're like rehashing in your mind all of the possible arguments that are going to happen, all of the possible things this person is going to try to say to twist what you're saying and confuse you and redirect and misdirect you from the truth. You know how when you do that, I would practice that kind of stuff. Like think about everything that he's going to come at you with, and then look it up in Dr. George Simon's book. Oh, okay, so when he does that, that's this tactic. And when he does that, that's this tactic. So that starts to de-escalate your emotional triggering to what he's doing, and you start to look at it from this very detached, clinical, sterile sort of way, where it's just this name of something, and you don't have nearly that emotional response. And then you just state the facts, and just let him reveal himself. Because they will. Ultimately, they paint themselves. Let him reveal himself. And practice breathing, right? So before you respond in any way, take a deep breath. Maybe take a couple deep breaths, because that breath allows you a moment to collect yourself before you respond. That breath allows you the detachment of the emotional reaction, which is what they're counting on. The narcissist is counting on being able to poke you and then get you to come out with that, get you to look like the bad guy, get you to come out with the emotional response to that, and then they can go see. I don't know what the situation is, because I don't know what this counseling thing is. How old are your kids? I don't know if they can testify. I don't know if the kids can be part of these counseling sessions in any way. But, you mentioned that he was too rough with our kids. Your kids are probably aware of this to some degree, and probably aware of who their father is to some degree. So it would be really interesting if they could testify to what they saw, if they could express their feelings about you guys and the custody arrangement and how they're being treated by their father and mother, and how they're watching their parents treat each other. So you got to take the high road. You can't let him trigger you into those kinds of emotional reactions, because he's only going to use that against you, right? So you want to be as calm as possible. You want to rehearse and practice this so that you can deliver this in the least defensive way. You don't want to look like you're being defensive, because then you look like you're guilty even when you're not. You're just so desperate for people to see the truth, but you could look like the crazy one in that moment, and that they know that. That's why they purposely do that. So I would get legal advice first. I would get Dr. George Simon's book, get it delivered right away, read that, really study and memorize those covert aggressive tactics. I would bring that book in your bag with you to these counseling sessions. I would introduce your counselor to those tactics. And see how much your counselor actually understands about narcissism, sociopathy, whatever that is, the emotional manipulation at the very least, that's coming from your ex. And just as much as possible focusing on the mindfulness, because when things are so out of control like that, we can get to that point where we just want to give up, or we just check out, and that's right when they get you, right in that moment of weakness. So don't give him that. Stay strong, and remember, this isn't just about you. There's something bigger here. It's about your kids. This is you fighting for your kids. This is you fighting for the wellness, the health, the sanity of your children. It's not just about you and this guy in the custody battle. It's about the future of your kids, and you must be very concerned about that because of who their father is, and because of what they've already witnessed, and the interactions they've already had with him, and how they've seen him treat you, and how they've seen you be destroyed from that relationship. All of those things are devastating on the kids. And maybe that's something to bring up too, about therapy for the kids, for having witnessed that, for having been raised by a parent like that. But again, I would just be as neutral as possible and come with this book, with this scientific explanation from Dr. George Simon about what those tactics are, so you can call him out in real time. Because everything that you say about the past, like you said, it's like that he said, she said thing, right? So call him out in the moment, while you're in that therapy session, as he's doing those covert aggressive manipulation tactics, which from Dr. George Simon's book. Call it out right there in the moment. That way the therapist has been witness to that. Because what happened in the past, therapist wasn't there, right? Even if that person really wants to help you and really has good intentions, if they weren't there, they didn't see it. They don't really know. All they know is what's happening right here, right now, during that session. So practice it. Practice delivering what it is that you want to say in a calm, relaxed manner, without the emotional charge. And as soon as you catch yourself feeling emotional, like you're gonna feel like palpitations in your chest and everything's gonna start breathing, and you're like panicking with your breathing, right? And then maybe your hands are sweating and you're getting hot flashes and like maybe a headache, right? All the responses that your body might be having to the stress. Breathe, and come back fully present and grounded in your body, so that you don't get triggered defending yourself from these imaginary things that are distracting you from what's really actually happening in the moment. Call him out in the moment. Allow the therapist to be the witness. And I would also visualize that going in the best way possible for the highest good. Imagine that this therapist is really knowledgeable and or really perceptive, and the therapist is very objective and able to see through the charades and the acting that your ex is going to put on, and all that charm, that the therapist is going to be able to identify those things and state the obvious, which that this person is manipulating you, and this person is manipulating your kids. And whatever outcome you hope from there, be really clear. Like I don't know what it is that you're going to the therapy about. Is it about the custody agreement, how much time he gets, or how you exchange the kids, or whatever that is? But I would go in there with your intent of what it is that you want to get out of that. Whatever that custody arrangement is, that's going to be as beneficial as possible for you and your kids, so that you can all have your health and sanity and well-being. I would make this like prayer, this mantra that you practice beforehand and on your way there, and keep practicing afterwards, and just keep visualizing the outcome that you want instead of visualizing the fears, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of fears right now about this situation, and you don't want to let those fears drive you. You want to have what it is that you actually want, the outcome that you actually want from this. Put your intent out there and just keep visualizing that and visualizing that and visualizing that. Like, this is what elite athletes do before they have a performance. This isn't some woo-woo idea, right? Elite athletes do this. They rehearse in their mind. They do visualization practices where they see the race, or they see their performance going exactly the way they want, optimum, results, and they visualize it and visualize it and visualize it. And then when they get out there and do it, it's like second nature because they visualized it so much that their mind, their subconscious mind fully believes it. Your subconscious mind, which is 88% of your power, doesn't know the difference between what you're remembering and what you're imagining and what's quote unquote really happening, right? That means that when you visualize something, it's like as if it were already happening, right? You're having the physiological response. That's why when you have flashbacks of the abuse, you're having the physiological response just the same as when you were in the moment when that person was abusing you, right? So you can use it in the positive way by visualizing the outcome that you want, by visualizing it going exactly as you want it, having that intent, seeing that end goal, whatever that is, whatever you hope to gain from that, whatever outcome you want to see, and making it possible. I'm sending you a huge, huge hug.